When you wake up every morning, the first thoughts in your head are about your life, your problems, your dreams, your responsibilities. You carry those thoughts everywhere you go because they are yours. Now, here's the part most people struggle with. Nobody else is carrying them the same way. Nobody else is waking up thinking about your goals, your pain, your struggles. That weight belongs to you, not them. And when you start expecting others to carry it like you do, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Think about it for a second. How many times have you told someone about your struggles hoping they'd understand and they just nodded, maybe gave you a word or two, and then moved on? Not because they don't care at all, but because they can't feel the depth of it the way you do. They don't live inside your head. They don't carry the sleepless nights or the silent battles. They only see what you show them, and what you show is never the full picture because you're the only one who knows the full picture. That's why depending on others to invest in your life the same way you do is dangerous. You'll always feel like they're not giving enough, not showing up enough, not caring enough. But the truth is, they're not built to give what you give yourself. They can support, but they can't sustain you. They can listen, but they can't live it. They can stand beside you, but they can't walk the miles that belong to your journey. And every time you expect that, you add weight to a bond that can't carry it. Let me put it this way. Imagine you're holding a glass of water. To you, it might not seem heavy at first, but the longer you hold it, the more your arm starts to hurt. That's your life. To you, it's heavy, but manageable because it's yours. Now hand that same glass to someone else. At first, they'll hold it without issue, but after a while, it will hurt them too. Why? Because they weren't built to carry it for long. That's the reality of expecting people to invest in your struggles and dreams like you do. It's not their glass, it's yours. This doesn't mean people don't care about you. It doesn't mean people are heartless. It means their capacity is limited. Their focus is on their own glass of water, their own battles, their own storms. So when you expect them to prioritize your life like you prioritize it, you will always feel let down. It's not betrayal. It's not neglect. It's just human nature. People are wired to focus on what affects them the most, and that's their own life, not yours. The freedom comes when you accept this truth. When you finally stop expecting someone else to fight your battles harder than you fight them yourself. When you stop waiting for someone to check in on you the way you check in on yourself. The moment you stop handing over responsibility for your happiness, you stop being fragile because your strength stops depending on whether someone else shows up, whether someone else cares enough, whether someone else validates your effort. You start to understand that the investment has to come from you first. And when you get this, when it clicks, relationships change. They become lighter. You no longer suffocate people with the expectation that they need to pour into you what only you can pour into yourself. Instead, you allow them to be who they are, supporters, companions, encouragers, but never the source of your survival. And suddenly, instead of constant disappointment, you start to appreciate people for what they can give without resenting them for what they can't. That shift changes everything about the way you move through life. The fastest way to get hurt in life is to expect people to act the way you would act. You give your best and you think they'll give their best back. You stay loyal and you believe they'll stay loyal too. You sacrifice and you imagine they'll do the same when it's your turn. But life doesn't work like that. People don't mirror your behavior just because you showed them how. And when you build expectations around that, you end up with frustration, resentment, and a constant feeling that no one measures up. Expectations are heavy. They look small in your head, but once you place them on another person, they weigh down everything. You think you're just asking for something simple, like a text back, a call, or some support when you need it. But in reality, you're asking them to think and act outside of their natural habits. You're asking them to stop being who they are and become who you want them to be. And every time they fail to meet that mark, you take it personally, like it's an attack, when in truth, it's just them being themselves. Here's the problem. People don't live with your same level of awareness about your needs. You might spend hours thinking about how you'd be there for someone if they needed you, but that doesn't mean they're spending hours thinking about how to be there for you. They don't sit around analyzing your emotions the way you do. So when you expect them to meet you at your level, you end up waiting, wishing, and then hurting. That cycle breaks you down, not because they failed you, but because you built a fantasy in your head of how they should act. And this is why disappointment becomes a pattern. The more you expect, the more you set yourself up to be let down, because people rarely meet expectations perfectly. They'll miss the mark, forget the detail, overlook the effort. Not always on purpose, not always out of malice, but simply because they're human. Yet every time that happens, you take it as proof that you don't matter, proof that you're not valued, proof that you're alone. When in reality, the real issue is not that they failed you, it's that your expectation was never realistic to begin with. Think about this. When was the last time you expected someone to show up and they didn't? That sting you felt wasn't just from their absence, it was from the gap between what you thought they'd do and what they actually did. That gap is where disappointment lives. If you didn't expect it, it wouldn't cut so deep. If you weren't waiting on them, their silence wouldn't echo so loudly. It's the weight of your own expectation that makes their actions or lack of actions hurt as much as they do. The shift happens when you stop expecting and start observing. When you stop placing demands on how someone should treat you and instead just watch how they actually treat you. People show you who they are by what they do consistently, not by what you imagine they should do. And once you accept that, you stop being shocked. You stop being crushed every time someone doesn't live up to the standard you created in your mind. You start seeing people clearly for what they give and what they don't, without making it a reflection of your worth. Because the truth is, expectations create dependency. You're handing over your peace of mind to someone else's actions. You're making your happiness conditional on whether or not they check the boxes you created. And that's why you feel powerless when they don't deliver. But when you let go of those expectations, you take the power back. You stop waiting for them to fill a role they never agreed to play, and you start filling that role yourself. That's how you end the cycle of constant disappointment and free yourself from emotional dependence. When you stop depending on others, something powerful happens inside you. At first, it feels lonely. You feel like you've been abandoned, like you have no one to fall back on. But then you realize what's really happening. You're being pushed into a position where you have to stand on your own. And that's where self-reliance begins. The more you carry yourself, the stronger you become. Not because life gets easier, but because you finally stop waiting for someone else to carry the load for you. Confidence is not built from people cheering you on. It's built in silence, in those moments where you had no help, no applause, no one clapping for you, but you moved forward anyway. Every time you choose to rely on yourself, you prove to yourself that you can survive without being rescued. That proof stacks up like bricks. Each time you handle something alone, you lay another brick of confidence, and eventually you build a foundation so strong that nothing anyone does or doesn't do can shake it. Self-reliance doesn't mean you push everyone away or never accept support. It means you stop expecting the world to save you and start realizing you can save yourself. When you know you can depend on you, your energy changes. You stop being desperate for help, and desperation is what weakens people. You stop begging for validation because you've already validated yourself through action. And the stronger you get in this mindset, the less fragile your emotions become when people inevitably let you down. Here's the truth. Every time you rely on someone else to fix you, you hand them control. If they come through, you feel good. If they don't, you fall apart. That's not stability. That's a roller coaster. But when you rely on yourself, you create stability from within. You know that even if no one shows up, you still can. That kind of security is unshakable. It turns you from someone who constantly needs to be carried into someone who can carry themselves, no matter what storm hits. And here's the hidden benefit. Self-reliance makes relationships healthier. When you're confident in your own strength, you don't cling to people out of fear. You don't drain them with endless demands to keep proving they care. You let people come and go without losing yourself in the process. That freedom changes the way others see you. Instead of being someone who constantly needs, you become someone who gives, someone who inspires, someone who draws respect simply because you're not asking to be rescued every time life gets heavy. Think about the times in your life when you've handled something completely on your own. Maybe it was a financial struggle, maybe an emotional breakdown, maybe a challenge at work or school. It was painful, it was exhausting, but when it was over, didn't you look back and realize, I made it through that? That feeling is self-reliance turning into confidence. It doesn't come from comfort, it comes from trial. And every trial you survive without leaning on someone else becomes a new reminder of your own strength. This is why self-reliance is non-negotiable if you want to be truly strong, because people will always come and go, but you're the only one guaranteed to stay with yourself every single day of your life. The moment you start betting on your own ability to handle life, you stop being at the mercy of who shows up and who doesn't. You stop being afraid of being left alone because you've already proven that alone doesn't break you, it builds you. When you keep giving without limits, you eventually run dry. It doesn't matter how strong you think you are. If you keep pouring into everyone else without drawing lines, you'll reach a point where you have nothing left for yourself. That exhaustion isn't just physical, it's emotional. You start resenting the very people you once wanted to help because deep down, you know they're taking from a place you can't afford to give. That's what happens when you live without boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're not about shutting people out or being cold. They're about knowing where your energy ends and someone else's begins. When you fail to set them, you blur the line between what's yours to carry and what belongs to someone else. You start solving problems that aren't yours, feeling emotions that don't belong to you, and breaking yourself down just to keep others whole. That's not kindness. That's self-neglect disguised as care. The truth is, no one is going to set those boundaries for you. People will take as much as you're willing to give, not always because they're selfish, but because it's human nature to accept what's offered. If you don't draw the line, they won't know there is one. So you end up drained, bitter, and emotionally burned out, not because they crossed you, but because you never marked where enough was in the first place. Boundaries are how you protect yourself from silently resenting the people you love. When you have boundaries, you create balance. You can show up for people without losing yourself in the process. You can care deeply without making their emotions your full-time responsibility. That balance is what keeps you from collapsing under the weight of relationships. It's not about caring less, it's about caring smarter. It's about recognizing that if you burn out, you won't be able to give to anyone, not them, not yourself, not anyone who actually needs your best energy. Here's the part most people get wrong. Boundaries don't push good people away. They filter out the wrong ones. The right people will respect your limits because they understand you're a human being, not a machine. The wrong people will get angry, offended, or try to guilt you into removing them. That reaction tells you everything you need to know. Boundaries don't ruin relationships. They reveal which ones were built on respect and which ones were built on convenience. Think about the last time you said yes when you wanted to say no. You walked away from that situation drained, didn't you? That's emotional burnout in motion. And every time you repeat it, your energy shrinks a little more. You start to dread answering calls, replying to messages, or even being around people at all. It's not because you don't care, it's because you cared so much without protecting yourself that you've run out of fuel to keep going. That's what happens when you ignore the power of healthy boundaries. Boundaries are not selfish, they are survival. They're how you stay mentally and emotionally strong in a world that will always demand more than you can give. They're how you make sure that when you do show up, you show up whole, not broken. They're how you protect your peace so that your presence remains valuable. And when you learn to enforce them without guilt, you stop being a victim of emotional burnout and start being the protector of your own well-being. One of the heaviest chains people carry is the constant need for validation. You post something online and you wait for the likes. You achieve something in life and you wait for the applause. You make a decision and you wait for approval from friends or family. That waiting becomes a trap. Because the moment you start tying your self-worth to the reactions of others, you put yourself in a cage where their silence feels like rejection and their praise feels like oxygen. Validation feels good, but it's dangerous when it becomes your fuel. Because if you rely on others to tell you that you're enough, you'll always be chasing it. You'll dress for it, work for it, even live for it. And when it doesn't come, you'll start doubting yourself, even if you've done nothing wrong. That's the problem. Validation is temporary. It lasts only as long as someone else is paying attention. And the second they stop, you feel empty again, like you were never whole to begin with. When you stop waiting for validation, you take control of your identity. You stop asking the world for permission to be who you are. You stop begging people to recognize your worth before you can recognize it yourself. That's where freedom begins, because true freedom isn't about how many people agree with you. It's about whether you can stand firm in what you believe, even if no one claps. It's about whether you can keep moving forward without an audience telling you that you're doing great. Think about how many decisions in your life you delayed or avoided because you were worried about what people would think. How many opportunities slipped by because you were too afraid of judgment. That's the cost of waiting for validation. It freezes you. It keeps you second-guessing every move until the moment passes. And when it passes, you're left with regret. Not because you weren't capable, but because you gave strangers, friends, or family more power over your choices than you gave yourself. The truth is, the people whose approval you're chasing are often too focused on their own lives to notice yours. They're not thinking about you as much as you imagine. And even when they do give you validation, it doesn't last. You'll need it again tomorrow and the next day and the next. It's like drinking salt water. It feels like relief